कुंज बिहारी। गोपी जना वल्लभा गिरिवरधारी। गोपी जना वल्लभा गिरिवरधारी। यशोदानंदन ब्रज जन रंजन। यशोदानंदन ब्रज जन रंजन। यमुना तीरा वनचारी। यमुना तीरा वनचारी। जय राधा माधव कुंज बिहारी। गोपी जना वल्लभा गिरिवरधारी। यशोदानंदन ब्रज जन रंजन। यशोदानंदन ब्रज जन रंजन। जमुना तीरा वनचारी। जमुना तीरा वनचारी। राधा माधव कुंज बिहारी। हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे हरे, हरे राम 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 हरे हरे, हरे कृष्णा हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे हरे, हरे राम 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 हरे हरे। जय जय प्रभुपाद प्रभुपाद प्रभुपाद, जय प्रभुपाद निताय गौर हरि बोल, हरि बोल, हरि बोल, निताय गौर हरि बोल। श्री हरिनाम संकीर्तन की, श्रील प्रभुपाद की।
Hare Krishna. So we are very fortunate to have His Grace Chaitanya Charan Prabhupada. I'll give a small introduction of his. He's a mentor, he's a monk, he's a speaker, he's a spiritual teacher for nearly 25 years in the Bhakti Yoga tradition through its modern day expression. He's an author of more than 27 books that explain the relevance of Vedic wisdom texts, including the Bhagavad Gita and the Ramayana. He's the author of the world's only daily blog on the Bhagavad Gita, GitaDaily.com, where he has written some 4,000 articles on the Gita. He's an invited speaker at TEDx, World Peace Conference, UNESCO, Intel, Google, Microsoft, Salesforce, Stanford, Princeton, Yale, Harvard, MIT, and Cambridge. He gives more than 400 talks across 100 cities in 4 continents every year. So, I remember His Grace Chaitanya Charan, and I would share the same room in the ashram in Kunja Bihari, and he would tolerate me. Right? That was the Kunja Bihari days, but now, because he has been merciful to me throughout, actually he's supposed to be at NVCC and doing a camp and everything, but somehow I held on. No, we want you, Prabhuji, here. We want you here. So he has taken out time for us. We would like to thank him. And let us welcome him by one time chanting the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram.
Om Jnanatimirandhasya Jnananjani. Okay, sorry. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Grantra Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 1, Chapter 19, Text 35. Api me Bhagavan Pritaha Krishna Pandu Sutta Priyaha Paitra Shvaseya Prityartham Tat Gotrasyat Bandhava Api me Bhagavan Pritaha Krishna Pandu Sutta Priyaha Paitra Shvaseya Prityartham Tad Gotrasyat Bandhava Api me Bhagavan Pritaha Krishna Pandu Sutta Priyaha Paitra Shvaseya Prityartham Tad Gotrasyat Bandhava सुतप्रियः विश्वसेय प्रीत्यर्थम् पुत्रस्याप्तबान्धवः इमे भगवान् प्रीतः कृष्ण पाण्डुसुतप्रियः विश्वसेय प्रीत्यर्थम् गोत्रस्याप्तबान्धवः कृष्ण पाण्डुसुतप्रियः विश्वसेय प्रीत्यर्थम् भगवान् प्रीतः कृष्ण पाण्डुसुतप्रियः प्रीत्यर्थम् गोत्रस्याप्तबान्धवः अपि definitely may unto me Bhagavan, the personality of Godhead, Preetaha, pleased, Krishnaha, the Lord, Pandu Sutta, the sons of King Pandu, Priyaha, dear, Paitra, in relation with the father, Swaseya, the sons of the sister, Preeti, satisfaction, Artham, in the matter of, Tat, there, Gotrasya, of the descendant, Ata, accepted, Bandhavaha, as a friend. Translation purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Lord Krishna, the personality of Godhead, who is very dear to the sons of King Pandu, has accepted me as one of those relatives just to please his great cousins and brothers. A pure and exclusive devotee of the Lord serves his family interest more dexterously than others who are attached to illusory family members. Generally, people are attached to family matters, and the whole economic impetus of human society is moving under the influence of family affection. Such deluded persons have no information that one can render better service to the family by becoming a devotee of the Lord. The Lord gives special protection to the family members and descendants of a devotee, even though such members are themselves non-devotees. Maharaj Prahlad was a great devotee of the Lord, but his father Hiranyakashipu was a great atheist and declared enemy of the Lord. But despite all this, Hiranyakashipu was awarded salvation due to his being the father of Maharaj Prahlad. The Lord is so kind that he gives all protection to the family members of his devotees. And thus the devotee has no need to bother about his family members, even if one leaves such family members aside to discharge devotional service. Maharaj Yudhishthira and his brothers were the sons of Kunti, the paternal aunt of Lord Krishna. And Maharaj Parikshit admits the patronage of Lord Krishna because of his being the only grandson of the great Pandavas. Om Jnanatimirandhasya Jnananjanisalakaya Chakshuronmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Iti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine वाञ्छाकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपा सिन्धुभ्य एव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौर भक्तवृंद। हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे हरे, हरे राम 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 हरे हरे। Hare Krishna. I'm grateful to be here with all of you. So, Karnataka Prabhu said that I tolerated him in the Brahmacharya ashram. Actually, I tolerated you much longer. In MIT also, we were together. Actually, in MIT, I tolerated you. In the ashram, you tolerated me. Dadati pratigranati. Spiritual life is a process of mutual tolerance till we develop mutual appreciation. And as I travel across America, so many devotees appreciate the kind of classes you are giving and the contributions you are making there. And here, it's a joy to see that Pune is expanding through the expansions of Pune. So, and not just Pune now, Aurangabad and other places. I'm happy to behold this and be of some service. Thank you. I was in Dallas, and now many cities in America are now considering having multiple temples. Sydney already has 2 temples. So the Dallas temple president was saying that here itself we have so much potential. In Dallas we should have 108 temples. So they have acquired 3 properties now and 3 more centers. So actually we need to accept people's laziness. That generally for spiritual life it's going to be difficult for people to go very far. So more and more centers. We had Kunjari, now we have NVCC, now we have here. So we make spiritual life as easy and as easily accessible as possible for people. It's wonderful that the center is flourishing now. So I will speak today on the topic of cultivating a grateful disposition. And I'll take this in 3 broader parts, which will be divided into some subparts that I won't get into. But the 3 main points is Parikshit. Here we will discuss Parikshit Maharaja's disposition, how that disposition reflects gratitude. Then the second point we'll discuss is 2 obstacles to gratitude, 2 dispositions that can prevent us, and we'll deal with how they happen and how they can be overcome. And the last part will be how to cultivate gratitude. So let's begin. Here, Parikshit Maharaj is saying, Apime Bhagavan Pritah Krishna Pandu Sutta Priyaha. So he's saying that Krishna has accepted me as one of his relatives to favor his devotees, the Pandavas. So if we look at what is happening, that more or less the focus of the Srimad Bhagavatam in the first canto is on setting the scene for the central discussion. Does anyone know how many chapters are there in the first canto? 19. You're on the last chapter, so it's natural that we know, good 19 chapters. Now, in the 19 chapters of Srimad Bhagavatam, there is basically the whole canto is setting the scene for the central discussion. That is between Parikshit Maharaj and Shukadeva Goswami. It will start in the second canto. In the first canto, Shukadeva Goswami doesn't speak a single word. So till the 7th chapter, there is first the conceptual setting is there from the 4th chapter to the 6th chapter. That is the discussion between Vyasadeva and Parikshit Maharaja. So Vyasadeva and Narad Muni. Now in 7th chapter, very briefly, Shukdev Goswami's history is described. Is mentioned a little bit in the 4th chapter also, and is mentioned in the 6th chapter also, 7th chapter, how he heard Bhagavatam and became enlightened. And the entire remaining chapters 7 to 19 is Parikshit Maharaj's backstory. The idea is that how did this conversation take place? How did these two people become in a position to have this conversation? Nowadays, say, podcasts are becoming common. So if two people are having a long podcast, it seems the world record for the longest podcast till now is 12 and a half hours. So, and it has something 700,000 views. Like nearly people have a big stamina to hear. You know, we say that people's attention span is decreasing. That's happening to some people. But generation after generation, it's seen every new generation has their average IQ higher than the previous generation. So, you know, if you try to see some kids' video games or ordinary games that they play, I had a nephew recently, so I was playing some games. It took me 1 hour to understand what was the game. And he was playing it effortlessly. They can process a lot of information. They get distracted because they can process so much information that reality is no longer interesting for them. So it's not that people are unintelligent. They're distracted, but they're not unintelligent. They may be spiritually uninterested. My point I'm making is that actually the Bhagavatam here, when it is setting the backstory, at that time it goes through complicated twists, but there is one focus. Sometimes the storyline is very simple, you know. There's the hero, the heroine, heroine meet each other, and then some problem comes up and they overcome the problem. But sometimes some stories go round and round. There's the hero, and hero has this relative, and this relative has that backstory, and the heroine has that relative, and that relative has that story, and both of them have a history together, and that history affects their relationship here. Sometimes things become a little convoluted, and we have to figure that out. So the Bhagavatam's first canto can seem a little convoluted, but it is not. Basically, from the 7th chapter onwards, the glory of Parikshit Maharaj is being talked about. I was talking about podcasts and how if two people are having a very long podcast, then if you're going to invest the time to hear that podcast, you would like to know who those people are, isn't it? If you know more, if suppose it's a podcast on AI, and you know this person is a pioneer in AI, and this person is a thinker about AI. So then, okay, we want to know a little bit more about AI. So now, in general, the lives of sages are not very interesting, isn't it? You know, at least traditional sages who lived in the forest. You know, every day you wake up, you do some meditation, you read some books, you speak some wisdom. So now, that's why the Bhagavatam doesn't focus so much. They can be interesting, but imagine there are two biographies being sold. One is the biography of some spiritual teacher, and the other is some biography of a very popular politician, or a very popular movie star or a sports star. Which biography would people be more interested in? Obviously, the person who has been successful in this world. That's why, while this conversation is going on with Parikshit Maharaja and Shukdev Goswami, the Bhagavatam focuses much more on the story of Parikshit Maharaj. And essentially, chapter 7 to 19 is the story of Parikshit Maharaj being told. So it begins right from how Parikshit Maharaj faced a threat to his very life and how he was saved. Actually, in one sense, it becomes even before that, why is he such an important person? You can see chapter 7 to 19. Chapter 7 focuses his importance. He is the sole heir. Everyone has been killed. Ashwatthama has killed him. So generally, whenever there is some important family, the king, their succession is very important. So quite often they have an heir and then they have a spare. Spare means if something happens to the heir, we should have somebody who can rule. So there was a British prince who was a spare throughout his life, and he has written this biography which is full of resentment that he never became the king. And somehow it's become a very popular book. It's about when very somehow it seems when very wealthy and famous and celebrate people write their life about how miserable their life is. That seems to increase their popularity. So anyway, but in this case there was no spare. And that he is such a vitally important person. That's emphasized in chapter 7. And then you consider chapter 8 is the threat to him at birth. Now in each of these chapters, many other things are happening. That's why I said it's a convoluted plot line. And sometimes you can get lost in some smaller stories. Now, these are not smaller. Kunti Maharani's prayers are not insignificant. They're extremely important. But the key point is that there is a core storyline going onwards. So he was threatened and he was saved right at the time of death. Then 9th chapter is Bhishma's departure. That is a preview or a precursor to his departure. That this is the glorious tradition, glorious dynasty he was born in. And just as Bhishma's departure is glorious, Parikshit Maharaja's departure will also be glorious. So basically, it's a preview to his departure, but it's also a description of his greatness. That this is the kind of dynasty he belonged to. And then like that, if you keep moving onwards, each chapter, while it has its own storyline, but there is also a significant focus on Parikshit Maharaj. So then, chapter 10 and 11, they are Krishna's travel to Dwarka. And so they describe basically the happy world that was there. That things were so cheerful, things were so happy, that the Lord was there. When he was traveling, people were delighted. When he reached there, people were delighted. So the world was very, in one sense, nice. Then, you can say 13th chapter, that is basically describing Dhritarashtra's renunciation. That's the focus. Vidura is departing. But through that, the point is being emphasized that this dynasty takes care of itself. That this is not a dynasty just because one person is a bad person, you abandon them. Vidura came back. Vidura could have, you didn't care for me, why should I care for you? That was not Vidura's attitude. So again, through that, the dynasty's glory is talked about. That's what is being established. So that, not in both ways, that Vidura came back is glorious, and that Dhritarashtra could actually develop renunciation when he had been attached throughout his life. That's also significant. So basically, if you see how different people have faced death so gallantly, so fearlessly. So that is the theme. In fact, the whole Bhagavatam is in one sense spoken in the shadow of death. It's like a deathbed dialogue, you can see. Not literally, they're not in deathbed, but it's very close to death. And then, after that, it is Dhritarashtra's renunciation by Vidura's influence. Then after that, chapter 14 and 15 is describing again another trauma, Krishna's departure and then the Pandavas' departure, the Pandavas' renunciation. So this describes now how that responsibility has fallen on Parikshit. How it was completely unexpected that Krishna's departure was utterly unexpected in one sense. Because if you see, when Yudhishthira is talking with Bhima about why Arjuna has not come back, and he is saying that, that the residents of Dwarka are living in Paramananda. They are the Mahapaurushikamiva. They are living like the Vaikuntha-vasis. And they are protected by Lord Krishna. Bahud and Bhujadanda Abhyam. They are protected by him. And he is thinking they are living so safely and wonderfully. And what has happened is they have fought among each other in a brutal drunken brawl, and they've killed each other. And Krishna has departed from the world. So basically, generally, when there is distress in life, that I'll come to this theme a little later, but generally, whenever there is distress, the distress does not depend only on the event. We generally think distress is a function of the event. But distress is not just a function of the event. Distress is a function of the gap between expectation and reality. So, the greater the gap, the greater is the distress. That means if we go to a place where there's a lot of tension and we are seen to be a part of the tension, so we know that I'm not going to be very warmly welcomed over there. Then we go with a little expectation that maybe I'll have to deal with some difficult situations. I was at one devotee's house in Texas, so they had put a note over there. All our guests make us happy. Some by arriving and some by departing. And then below in italics, your behavior will determine which category you fall in. So, the point is that sometimes we know some places, if we know that we are not likely to be warmly welcomed, then we are prepared for that. But if we go to a place where we expect to be warmly welcomed and we are harshly insulted over there, that will cause far greater distress. So, for the Pandavas, it was like that. To process Krishna's departure, and Krishna's departure was in some ways what you could say the opposite of a spiritually serene departure. At least Krishna helped Bhishma depart so serenely and so peacefully. But Krishna's own associate Dwarka, they didn't depart while chanting Hare Krishna or remembering Krishna. So it could have been totally disorienting. But the Pandavas were not disoriented. Although Arjuna was certainly disoriented for some time. But then he remembered Krishna's message in the Bhagavad Gita. And he reoriented himself. So Srila Prabhupada says, even a devotee can be perplexed. But a devotee is not discouraged. Now, perplexed means that a devotee just doesn't know what to do. When this has happened, how am I to process this? What am I to do over here? So we can be perplexed. But discouraged means, perplexed means that I don't know how to serve Krishna. Discouraged means I don't know if I should even serve Krishna. The two are different, very different things. So, perplexed means I don't know how I should serve Krishna. How I am to serve Krishna. If this has happened, what am I meant to do? That is one thing. I don't know whether I should even serve Krishna. This is being discouraged. So when the Gaudiya Math broke apart, Prabhupada was perplexed. He never thought that he was going to start a new mission. Prabhupada had helped the Gaudiya Math establish centers in Mumbai, and he had helped them get contacts in Allahabad, wherever he was. So Prabhupada saw himself also a part of the Gaudiya Math. And when he went to America, he was simply carrying forward his Guru Maharaj's mission. And his Guru Maharaj's mission was called the Gaudiya Math. So Prabhupada had no intention of starting a separate mission. But seeing the Gaudiya Math's internal fracture and seeing their non-supportiveness, he decided that I don't want what I do to get sucked into that conflict. Therefore he started, the mission was the same, but he gave the movement a different name. The point was, a devotee can be perplexed. So the Pandavas were perplexed, Arjuna was perplexed. But he remembered Krishna's message of the Bhagavad Gita, and he recovered. Now this is also setting the scene for how, even when death comes in non-ideal ways, how to respond to it properly. And that is what again Parikshit Maharaj is going to reflect. Parikshit Maharaj's death. So in one sense, all these incidents, they're diverse incidents, but there's Bhishma's departure, there is Dhritarashtra's departure, there is Krishna's departure, there are Pandava's departure. And now all that is setting the scene. So now after that we have now chapters 16 and 17. They describe the glory of his rule. That how he was so vigilant that he could even chastise Kali. That Kali was overpowered. Kali was scared of him. And then, after establishing that he was not in any way an incompetent ruler, he was highly competent. He was, you could say, at the peak of his life. And at that time, this horrifying event happens to him. A small mistake that is described in the 18th chapter, and he receives a curse because of that. And he accepts the curse. So in one sense, this is a tragedy. This tragedy has befallen him now. Okay. Is it visible for those of you behind? You can see. Okay. Are you sure the font is quite small? Okay. Are you all, or are you happy that you can't see? Okay. I'll try to write in the bigger font. So now, for Parikshit Maharaj, this catastrophe has befallen him. He has just been cursed to die in 7 days. And it's one of my friends is in the military, and he told me that he was in the military, he serves in military medicine. So he told me that when soldiers go to fight, generally speaking, the soldiers, to whatever extent they're theistic, even they're not, they become sometimes theistic. They pray that no bullet hit them. But if at all, he says, if a bullet is going to hit them, they pray that let it be a clean wound that kills me on the spot. Let it not be a wound that causes me to writhe in pain for days and weeks and months, and maybe leaves me crippled for life. Because for somebody who has been active, physically active and powerful, that is extremely difficult. They tell me most of the times when I treat the soldiers in the hospital, there is those soldiers for whom both of these prayers went unanswered. So a bullet was there, but a bullet didn't kill them. So when Shringi cursed Parikshit Maharaj, he could have cursed him to die immediately. But deliberately he cursed him to die in 7 days. That means his thought was, 7 days you will have to wait in helpless agony. You are going to die and you can do nothing about it. And especially, helplessness is painful for anyone. But helplessness is especially painful for somebody who is powerful. So he didn't just want Parikshit Maharaj to die, he wanted Parikshit Maharaj to suffer before he died. And that's why it was 7 days. So you suffer for 7 days. So 7 days suffering due to powerlessness. Now this was agonizing. So what has befallen Parikshit Maharaj is horrible. He has to die for a minor mistake. He himself is a king and he has administered justice. And one of the key principles of justice is that the punishment has to be proportional to the crime. Isn't it? Now, if you invite a guest to your house, maybe you invite the king of a country to your house, and the king comes and graciously eats food, we treat them very nicely. But when the king goes back, the king notices he's got a swelling on his cheek because a mosquito bit him. And he says, this host, they're so terrible. They didn't clean their house of mosquitoes. So, go and blow up their house. No, put a bomb and detonate the whole house. For a mosquito bite, you cannot do that. But that is disproportionate. So, disproportionate punishment is horrible. So, what is a minor infraction and a horrible punishment? And that is extremely difficult to process. So, there are two words. I'll write the words and you can tell me if there is a difference between the two. Adversity, atrocity. Bhishma Pitama refers to this, aho kashtam anyayam. So kashta and anyaya. Atrocity and adversity. How many of you think there is a difference between these two words? Or not, the words are different really, but in the meaning of these two words? Okay. How many of you think there is no difference? How many of you think the difference does not make any difference? So, okay, those of you think there's a difference. What do you think is the difference between adversity and atrocity? Yes?
Adversity meaning that there is a difficult situation in front of you.
Okay.
And atrocity is something that is being happened to you or done to you.
Done to you, yes. Thank you, that's a very good answer. So adversity is more like a natural difficulty. Natural difficulty means, say somebody grows old and then they can't hear properly, they can't walk properly. It's a difficulty. Or there's a flood and our whole house is destroyed, our crops are destroyed. That's adversity. But atrocity is humanly done. It has a human cause to it. You could say adversity has a natural cause, atrocity has a human cause to it. So there might be a flood, but if we come to know that just before the flood came, some neighbor of ours, opened the bund near our farm or our property, and that's why the flooded our property. Then that is not just adversity, that is atrocity. So among adversity and atrocity, which is more difficult to bear? Atrocity. Why is that? Sorry? Okay, so yeah, but why does that make it difficult to bear? Yes, again, thank you. The gap between expectation and reality. That why would he or she do something like this? Why would they do that to me? So now Parikshit Maharaj had been a protector of Brahmanas. He had been a protector of sages. So what befell him? Was it adversity or an atrocity? It was an atrocity. And atrocities are extremely difficult to bear. Especially, see, when a bad person does a bad thing, that's bad enough, but that's what you expect. But when a good person does a bad thing, then it is very difficult to bear. If we are in office and there is some politics and there is backstabbing and we lose some promotion, we lose some job opportunity because of that, it's painful. But say if we are in the devotee community and then we find something like that, that's even more painful. Because that's not what I expected over here. So when good people do bad things, it is even more difficult to bear that. So for Parikshit Maharaj, it was like that. He is now in a situation where for a minor fault, he is cursed to die. And what is his response? Here, in one sense, in this series of verses, and he renounces the kingdom, he goes to the forest, he sits by the Ganga, the sages come, he welcomes the sages, he thanks them for coming. And when he's thanking them for coming, he is contemplating, okay, why would all these sages come? And these sages are devoted to the Lord. He says, because the Lord has accepted me as his relative. That's why the Lord has inspired all of them to come here for the time of my departure. So basically, what is Parikshit Maharaj doing? He is finding reasons to be grateful. You could say that this is a stretch. He could have said, oh, I have been such a great sage. Therefore, I have been such a great king, saintly king, Raja Rishi. Therefore, all the sages should come. But he's not thinking he's entitled to that. He's thinking that I am benedicted by that. That they are coming not because of me, but because of my ancestors, because of my grandparents. They were such great devotees. So he is finding reasons to have a positive devotional disposition. He's not just grateful, but you could say he's humbly grateful. It is sometimes we can be grateful, but if we feel I'm entitled to do something, then that we may express thanks when we get something. But if we don't get that thing, we will express anger. And that anger's expression will be far more forceful than the expression of gratitude. So real gratitude happens when we don't have an entitlement mentality. Otherwise, when we think I'm entitled to something, we can't really feel very deeply grateful. So Parikshit Maharaja is actually exhibiting deep gratitude over here. He is finding reasons to be humbly grateful. And for all of us, we face difficulties. We face relationship issues, health issues, financial issues, even spiritual issues in terms of we not be able to practice the way we like, we would want to. But at these times, we need to find reasons to be grateful. We'll see Srila Prabhupada does that. Boro krupa koile Krishna adhamera prati. Now, if you think from a material perspective, Prabhupada has nothing to be grateful for. He's all alone. He's in a distant land. He has no followers. He has no institutional support. He has next to no money. The only asset that he had was his body. And that body was reeling under and recovering from 2 heart attacks. The first thing that a person would think, okay, I want to go to a hospital and get myself checked up. But Prabhupada, what is he thinking? I'm grateful. You are being very merciful to me. So what is Prabhupada doing? Prabhupada is also looking for reasons to be grateful. So where is Krishna's mercy? That if Prabhupada is looking for facility for service, Prabhupada's life was centered on service. But if he was looking for facility for service, there is no facility at all. And somebody can say there is no mercy. But Prabhupada was seeing at least there is an opportunity for service. That my Guru Maharaj wanted me to share Krishna Bhakti in the West. And I couldn't do it throughout my life. But at the fag end of my life, at least I have come to America. I have got an opportunity. And for that opportunity, he is grateful. So, our devotional disposition, if we truly understand that Krishna is in control, our devotion will be seen. Krishna said, Dadami buddhi yogam tam yena mamupayanti te. So if you are bhajatam priti purvakam, then if you are practicing bhakti, we'll get the buddhi to come to Krishna. Buddhi to come to Krishna, that can also mean intelligence to find reasons to be grateful. Grateful to Krishna. So our devotion is seen by our intelligence. And what intelligence? Not just we have to memorize verses and this and that. That's good if you can do it. But the intelligence by which we can find reasons to be grateful. And Parikshit Maharaj is doing that over here. So this is the big part of the talk. I said the second part will be 2 obstacles to gratitude. So when we face difficulty, especially when we face some adversity or some atrocity, there are 2 ways in which we can go. One is in the face of adversity or atrocity, there could be 2 unhealthy responses. One is guilt. The other is grudge. So guilt means we blame ourselves. Grudge is we blame others. When we hold a grudge against others, that means we're blaming, 25 years ago, you spoke like this to me. Okay. So 25 years, you have been carrying the weight of that grudge. How much emotional energy did you waste in that? So, a grudge it can also lead to resentment. One can be resentful. So, blaming others is definitely unhealthy. And blaming ourselves can also be unhealthy. I'll explain how. So, let's look at these two obstacles. Now, Parikshit Maharaj could have blamed Shringi. He could have blamed Shamik Rishi. This is an example of irresponsible parenting, isn't it? The children are reflections of their parents. You think of yourself to be a sage? What kind of sage are you if your child behaves like this? He could have got angry. And you could say he would have had reason to get angry because he was dealt with unfairly. And this is where it's important for us to know when to look at the circumstantial and when to look beyond the circumstantial. That when sometimes, say, as I said, some distress, some sad event happens in our life. And when the distress occurs, we can place the distress in various explanatory contexts. That means, say right now, if I'm feeling cold, I could say, why am I feeling cold? Okay. I could say that maybe I'm sitting under the fan. Or maybe I've not got enough warm clothes. Maybe the weather doesn't suit me of this particular place. Maybe I've got some fever. But if I say, why am I feeling cold? Because the world is dukkhalaya. Well, that's not the most constructive of explanations, isn't it? We have to find out when there is distress, which is the most constructive explanation. Take the other way around. That if some guest comes to our house, and then that guest is taking rest at night, and they say, and I'm feeling a little cold. What to do, Prabhu? This world is dukkhalaya. We would say that. Maybe that philosophical point is true, but it's a misapplication of that point. So we need to find out the explanation that is most constructive. Can I give you some blanket? Can I give you some warm clothes? That's our service attitude. If somebody says, I am feeling cold, that is not the time for us to teach philosophy to them. That is the time for us to offer practical service to them. So the point I'm making is, it is important for us to find, whenever we are in a particular situation, to look for the most constructive explanation for that situation. So sometimes when people do some bad things to us, unless they have had a track record of having done bad things repeatedly to us, it's best to forgive, just to move on. Generally, and this is a whole big topic, but Kanai Thakur Prabhu has given me the permission to torture you. So, whenever there is a hurtful action done by anyone, there could be various reasons for it. One could be ignorance. That means that they just didn't know that their action is going to hurt us. Suppose somebody organizes a program, they don't invite us for the program, and we feel bad. And then after that we talk with them. We will feel like pathetic asking, why didn't you invite me? But suppose later on we have a discussion, they find, I thought you wouldn't like to come for a program like this. It's such a small program. So it might just be ignorance. It could be ignorance, it could be incompetence. Incompetence means just there are too many things to do and they forgot about it. Or they just don't have the capacity to handle that kind of things. And that's why they did something that hurt us. It's incompetence. Say somebody cooks food invites us for food for their house, and say, our child has peanut allergy, peanut butter, and then they cook food with peanuts, and then we can't eat it. But no, it's not that they wanted to hurt our child. It's just incompetence. We might have talked about it a long time in a conversation, and we expected them to remember it, but they forgot. So it could be incompetence sometimes. And third it can be malevolence. Malevolence means, like, we have heard the word benevolence, like bona fide, malefied. So like that, benevolence, malevolence. Benevolence means wanting to do good. Malevolence means wanting to do bad. So in general, when somebody does some action that hurts us, now depending on our previous relationship with that person, we jump towards one of these three explanations. Say, if we like someone, and that person, we invite them to our house, and that person eats an impressive quantity of food. And they eat so much food that, for our other guests, food becomes a little short. And we have to run around and cook a little bit more. Now, if we like that person, we'll say, must have been very hungry. And if we don't like that person, what a glutton. No sense control. Isn't it? So, the action is the same. If somebody we like sleeps a lot, must have been tired. If somebody we don't like sleeps a lot, what a lazy person. So, in general, we can only see people's actions. And from people's actions, we jump to inferences about their motivations. So now, generally when we hold a grudge against someone, when we resent someone, here we are talking about specifically distresses that come because of somebody's actions to us. Then adversity kind of thing. Adversity? Atrocity, yes. So if you didn't answer this question, I would have considered it an atrocity. So now, it is easy for us to jump toward the explanation of malevolence. That, this person wanted to hurt me. But it's not like that. Most of the time, most people are too busy in their own lives to want to make it the mission of their life to hurt us. Isn't it? To think that somebody is out there to hurt me. We are thinking we are too important. Yeah, there can be sometimes people who are enemies, people out to destroy us, but most often it's not that people out there are there to hurt us. Now, everybody has a movie going on in their head. And in their movie, they are heroes. And everyone else is just an extra. So in most people's movies, mental movies, we are just some extra over there. So, how many times in a movie does the hero make it the mission of the life to beat up the extra? Or even the villain. The extra is just an extra. Isn't it? So, like that, resentment, when we jump towards the inference of malevolence, it's helpful to remember that we are just mostly extras in their mental movies, in the movies going on in their mind. So it's unlikely that they specifically started out to hurt us. So Parikshit Maharaj could have held a grudge if he had thought, Shringi and this father-son pair were out to destroy me. No, he didn't do that. Now the actions were destructive, but he didn't ascribe a motive of destructiveness. And that's how he was able to stay peaceful. So when we hold a grudge against others, actually speaking, when we resent somebody for something that they have done. Now there are of course situations when there will be people who are malevolent. And at that time we have to punish them. The Pandavas, when it became clear that the Kauravas were out to destroy them, the Kauravas were not ready to settle for a compromise at all. They rejected Krishna's peace proposal. They tried to arrest Krishna. Then their malevolence became very clear. At that time, fighting had to be done. But in general, it's best for our own emotional health to jump to the least negative conclusion about others. The Bhagavad Gita says that one of the characteristics of the godly is apaishunam. Apaishunam means aversion to fault finding. It's not that a person never finds fault, but aversion, when we have aversion means that's not something which we like to do. So that means a person does not like to jump to the worst conclusions about the other person. Worst conclusions about the motives of that person's actions. So this is, if you want to avoid resentment, if you want to avoid blaming others, it's best when somebody has done something that hurts us, don't presume that they did it because they wanted to hurt us. Okay, it just happens. This happens. So I was in the New York airport and I was just walking along, and then suddenly, bang, something hit me. I just almost rolled over and fell down. And I felt so annoyed, I felt so angry. I looked around and there was like this very heavily built young man just walking along, not even an apology. And I just turned around, and then there was a young girl with him, and she looked at me, I'm sorry. And she touched him and she pulled him around. Then when I looked at his face, I saw that this one face you could make out, he had something like Down syndrome. And immediately, my anger, whatever anger, annoyance was there, it went away. Because he was not even aware. He was not very well coordinated in his limbs. And that's why, when he hit me, when he hurt me, it was just ignorance on his part. You could call it incompetence. It's just that he had no intention to hurt me at all. So in general, the way things work in this world is that most of the times when we hurt each other, it is without any conscious intention to do so. It is out of ignorance or it is out of incompetence. And you may say, I am a good person. The world should be good to me. People should be good to me. Well, that's like saying that, you've heard of these matadors who fight in bullfights. They enter into the bullfight and there's a big, wild bull whom they have to control. So, suppose we enter into a matador ring and there's a big, wild bull over there charging towards us. We say, hey, wait, I'm a vegetarian. Well, it is good to be vegetarian, but that does not mean we can expect the bull to be nice to us, isn't it? So, the world is a place of kalaha. It's a place of conflict. Just because I am good does not mean that the world will be good to me. Yes, it is good to be vegetarian, no doubt. But you can't expect the bull to appreciate that you are a vegetarian. Similarly, it is good to be good, but don't expect that everybody will be good to us. And when people are not good to us, that's not because they are our enemies. They could be. But in general, what Parikshit Maharaja demonstrates is, there is practically no reference to he feeling angry or resentful or holding any grudge against either Shringi or Shamik Rishi. In fact, so that chapter is closed. It's happened, it's over now. So one of the obstacles to feeling grateful is to have a grudging mentality. When we have a grudge, we are, instead of finding reasons to be grateful, we are finding reasons to be angry at the other person. And we are holding on to the reasons, even those events happened 10 years ago, 15 years ago, 20 years ago. So Parikshit Maharaj has just closed that chapter. What's happened? It's over. Let's see what I can do next. That's one side. That we don't want grudge. We don't want to blame others. What is the other obstacle to gratitude? Blaming ourselves. Now guilt can be a good thing if it stops us from doing a bad thing. But guilt can become a bad thing when it stops us from doing a good thing. So guilt is a good thing when it stops us from doing a bad thing. That means, say, I have a tendency to speak harshly, suppose. Speak rudely, speak impulsively. And If after I speak something and I see the other person is hurt by my words, then I feel guilty. Then next time when the urge comes to lash out verbally, I know I should not do it. So guilt can be a good thing when it stops us from doing a bad thing, from being harsh in our speech, for example. But guilt can also be a bad thing when it stops us from doing a good thing. Now what does this mean? Sometimes we have done something wrong, and that wrong action, it consumes and cripples our mind so much that we think I am worthless, I am hopeless, I can never do anything good, I am lost. So, how it stops us from doing good thing when it consumes and cripples us. Now Parikshit Maharaj did express remorse. I should not have acted like that. I should not have put the garland on. And he does say, if there's any consequence that is going to come, let it come to me and not to my family. So he's willing to take responsibility for it. But while taking responsibility, he is not beating himself up constantly. What a terrible person I am, I did that. What a terrible person I am, I did that. Now, okay, you did it, it's done. Again, let's close the chapter. Don't let, even if there's a wrongdoing that is done by us, if the wrongdoing should not consume and cripple, should not consume our mind and cripple our actions. If it cripples our actions, it just makes us incapable of doing anything, then that guilt is toxic. Now, guilt can actually be quite damaging if it happens like this. Have any of you heard this sentence? I am a fallen soul. We often say it. We often hear others say it. But sometimes when we say it, it is like the fallen becomes so big that the soul is forgotten. So, you say, I am fallen. Well, see, fallen is also a temporary designation. It is just like I'm male, I'm female, I'm young, I'm old, I'm wealthy, I'm poor, I'm intellectual, I'm sentimental. These are designations based on the conditionings of the body-mind machine that we have. So similarly, fallen is a designation based on the conditioning that we have. So, the soul is always pure. Sometimes we misidentify with the fallen so much that we forget that we are the soul. That the soul needs to be our sole goal, isn't it? But we forget the soul completely, and I am fallen, I am fallen. And when this happens, we start don't identify with your material side. Don't identify with, I am wealthy, I am good looking, I am this, I am that. Don't identify with the body. Well, saying I am fallen is identifying with the body. Because I am not fallen. Yes, I have a body-mind machine that is having some severe conditionings. And I can't deny that. But I am a soul. So our identification with the soul has to be greater than our identification with the fallen part. Otherwise, we can just be crippled by guilt. And there's so much we can do if that crippling burden of guilt is taken away. We all, in some way or the other, feel inadequate. That we may feel that, okay, I'm not able to chant attentively enough, I'm not able to read Shastra enough, I'm not able to do enough seva. It's good to feel that what I'm doing is not enough, I should be doing more. But that feeling that I should be doing more should be a positive aspiration, not a negative guilt. There's a big difference in the psychological impact of doing more. I want to do more. So I want to do more, it's a positive aspiration. Whereas I should be doing more. This can very easily generate into a negative guilt. That means it's not that I like to do it, it's not that this is good for me, it's not that I want to express my love for Krishna. It's I'm being guilted into doing it. Sometimes others can guilt us, sometimes we can guilt ourselves. So if we are practicing our bhakti primarily under the burden of guilt, over a period of time, that will lead to mental health problems. We'll find ourselves being filled with negativity. When it is I should be doing more, then as soon as we see somebody else who is doing less, we start becoming angry, why are they doing so less? Why are they like this? Why are they like that? Why are they like that? And then that will make us very negative, and we will become unpleasant company. So we don't want that. See, in general, there's been a lot of studies about the relationship between religion and health. In one of my books, I've analyzed several of those studies. So in my book on the spiritual scientist, parts 2 and 3. So what in general it is found is physical health to some extent, but mental health is significantly improved by participation in religious activities. So if somebody goes to a church regularly, somebody is a part of a community, does some service, then they found that this correlates with people having less suicidal tendencies, less depression, less addiction, less negativity in general. So in that sense, they say religious affiliation is good, not just from the otherworldly perspective, but even from this worldly perspective. There's quite an influential book that has come out. It's called Religion for Atheists. Because what they did was, atheists, they tried to aggressively debunk religion. Say religion is all superstition, God is just a toxic idea, and like that. But then they found that irrespective of whether God exists or not, humanity has a psychological need for the things provided by religion. A sense of community, a sense of worship, a sense of contribution. So they're saying that how can we create atheistic rituals? So in Europe they have formed a temple of reason. Not a temple of God, a temple of reason. And the point is that religion generally contributes to overall mental health and emotional well-being. But there is one exception that sociologists have found. That is, when religions have extremely high moral standards, then they find that religious affiliation actually worsens the health of the participants. Because what happens when there is very high religious expectation, you should be doing this, you should not be doing this, then the feelings of inadequacy that come because of those high expectations, they lead to guilt. And that guilt can be very damaging. So, in general, this is positive, but when there is high expectation, expectation themselves is not bad. We all need expectations to help us grow. But we are talking about unbearably high expectations. Somebody just in a situation where they can't do something. Unbearably high expectations. So then, that can lead to guilt. And that guilt can harm mental health. So we see that Srila Prabhupada, when he was a grahastha, according to, as one of my godbrothers, one of my friends is trying to write a book on Srila Prabhupada's life as a grahastha. Now it's very difficult because most of the people who knew him at that time, knew Prabhupada at that time, are no longer there on the planet. But we're trying to get as many records. So he was telling me that if at that time there had been ISKCON, and if Prabhupada had been a member of ISKCON, most ISKCON devotees would have been constantly criticized Prabhupada for being such a non-serious devotee. You hardly come to the temple. How much seva do you do in the temple? How often do you come for the morning program? So, but Prabhupada was clear about his service. And there is no evidence that Prabhupada ever let himself get burdened by guilt. And when his god brothers tried to push him, you move to the temple, you become the temple leader. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada also didn't like that. He said, no, he will do everything in his own time. So don't guilt him into doing something right now. So the point is that certainly we all would like to do more and more service, connect with more and more with Krishna. But if in our present situation we are not able to do certain things, don't let that be a burden of guilt. Okay, I'm in this situation, let me do what I can. I accept the situation I'm in and I try to do more. So, in our service, sometimes we make mistakes. In our practice of bhakti, we might make mistakes. In our sadhana, we might make mistakes. We are all finite, fallible beings. So, acknowledge the mistake. But don't constantly beat yourself up because of the mistake. Okay, I made the mistake. I learned what I could from it. I'll be careful. Let me move forward. Sometimes we find we are still repeating the same mistake. That just means that the conditioning is particularly strong. And the conditioning is particularly strong, then we may need to create some safeguards for ourselves so that we are not put in that condition. That means, suppose somebody has a short temper and then they yell at others when they're short temper. Then they may decide, I'm not going to yell at others. And then some provocation comes and then they yell at others. And after that, they're yelling at themselves for having yelled at others. Well, maybe if somebody has a short temper, that person is best situated not taking up a high pressure service. There are different kinds of services. There are some services which require a lot of precision and timeliness. Other services, they don't require that much. So if we are not able to overcome a conditioning immediately, and we keep repeating the same mistake, even that does not necessarily make us a bad person. We don't have to necessarily burden ourselves by guilt. It means that, okay, this conditioning will take time to overcome. So let me not put myself in the condition where this conditioning will get triggered. So sometimes we rely on willpower, I will not do this again. But sometimes, so we could say willpower is internal. But sometimes we need external boundaries. So willpower is, I will not do this again. And we all need willpower, no doubt. But external boundaries means, I will not put myself in a situation where I'll be provoked to do this again. So that is our responsibility, where I will be provoked to do this again. Now, is that cowardice? No, it is just common sense. It is, if we have a particular weakness, then we have to be careful. So generally, when we go out of our homes, we put locks in our homes. If somebody is a thief, they can always break the lock and come in. Now, locks don't stop bad people from being robbers. But locks can stop good people from becoming robbers. Because even a good person, maybe they have some financial emergency or some urgent need in their life. And they see this door is open, this safe is open, let me just go and steal something. So sometimes boundaries are helpful. So to make sure the boundaries keep good people good. So having boundaries is tasmatam indriyanyadav niyamya bharatarshapha. So this niyam, this rule, where does it come from? That rule can come from one's own determination, but that rule can also come from social custom, social norms, social rules. So these boundaries, they help keep good people good. So guilt can be quite toxic. So just yesterday, a movie has been released called OMG 2. So long ago when this OMG movie was there, I had written a book re-answering the questions. So since yesterday evening, I got 25 questions about this movie. So I'll probably have to respond to it sometime. But basically the movie is about sex education and how that is required in today's society. Otherwise, people do terrible things because they're not educated properly. So now, yes, you'll say, sometimes some person does something wrong and that person feels so guilty, is made to feel so guilty. So that person may become suicidal. And that's terrible. Yeah, that is terrible, no doubt. So guilt should not be used as a rod to beat people down. That's certainly true. But at the same time, when we talk about sex education, there is a biological aspect to it and there is an ethical aspect to it. So in the West, sex education means everything ethical is removed and just the biological thing is there. This is a biological function and this is how this functions, this is how that functions. So now, that's like telling a person how to drive without telling them about the brakes, without telling them that even brakes are needed. So, actually speaking, yes, nowadays there is a possibility of, there are so many predators and children may be inappropriately touched and they may be sexually abused. So, in that sense, at a biological level, sex education may be necessary. But the way sex education is administered in mainstream society is that all ethical dimensions are removed from it. All ethical things are just religious prohibitions. And that's up to you. But, so sex education should not become a license for indiscriminate sex. It should not become a justification. That's when it becomes a problem. So yes, being burdened by guilt is a bad thing. But to never have guilt, that can be an even worse thing. Like somebody does something terrible and doesn't feel terrible. That is really terrible. Is it? So, say if I use crutches for walking. So when I'm walking, sometimes I'm talking with someone, I move step backwards. So I step backwards and sometimes the whole weight of my crutches is in my arms. It's in my weight of my body comes through my arms on the crutches. So if somebody is walking behind and I step on, my crutch steps on their foot, it can be quite painful. Don't be scared, it won't happen to you. But suppose that happens, it has happened only once with me, and I was mortified. And I apologized to that person. And I gave them some prasad and gave them one of my books. And that person afterwards wrote a mail to me. He says that he was quite appreciative of the book. So we subscribed for Gita Daily and he's now regularly Gita Daily reader. But anyway, but the point is that sometimes, say, if I step on somebody's foot or my crutch steps on somebody's foot, that's a terrible thing. And if I don't feel terrible, now that is indicating that the humanity within me is missing. If somebody put their foot on my foot, somebody had crutches and they put their crutches on my foot, I would feel hurt. So, just rejecting guilt completely is a terrible thing also. To not feel terrible on doing something terrible is terrible. Okay? So, we are not against guilt. It's just that when guilt cripples a person, that's a bad thing. So, Parikshit Maharaja is not crippled by guilt. Definitely not. He moves forward. And so we discussed this pendulum, the two obstacles, and in between, what do we have? The healthy way to respond to adversity is through gratitude. So that means, basically, when I am grudging, I am looking around to blame someone else. When I am guilty, I am looking down at myself to blame myself. But when I am grateful, I am looking up to see what is Krishna's plan here. Yes, this mistake happened, it's a bad thing. But just because a mistake has happened does not mean that Krishna has abandoned me. That Krishna has thrown me out of his plan. No, we're still a part of our plan. So, in one sense, if I'm here, grudge means I'm blaming others. Guilt means I'm blaming myself. But gratitude means I look up. There are a lot of psychological studies done to show how grateful people are actually more mentally healthy. And even people who are not spiritually minded, they try to keep a gratitude journal. If you go on Android store or iPhone store, there are gratitude journals, apps, and people try to write things I'm grateful for. That is good, overall what has happened is that many people want the benefits of spirituality without the essence of spirituality. That means, for example, gratitude is good, but they don't want God. Traditionally, gratitude was associated with God. So it's like people say, I'm just grateful. Whom are you grateful to? No, I'm grateful. I'm grateful in general. Okay. It's like, when sometimes Facebook, you have this relationship status. Are you single or are you married? So, if somebody is married, if you ask them, who are you married to? Well, I'm married in general. Well, there is no marriage in general, isn't it? Marriage is in particular. So similarly, there is no gratitude in general. Yeah, you can have a grateful disposition in general, but gratitude has to be specific. When I am feeling grateful, generally the idea is that someone or something has done some good to me, and that's why I am grateful. So, when you talk about gratitude, it can't be general. It has to be particular. So this attempt of saying that gratitude is general, that is meant to desacralize gratitude. Desacralize means to disconnect it from the sacred, to disconnect it from God. That we just make it a secular virtue. Yes, it is a virtue for secular people also. But ultimately, gratitude is based on the idea that there is something beyond me, and that something beyond me has done some good to me. So I could be grateful to my parents, I could be grateful to my partner, I could be grateful to my colleagues, I could be grateful to my relatives, I could be grateful to other devotees, I could be grateful to my spiritual master. Ultimately, all the people who are doing some good for us, it is Krishna who is Suhrudam Sarva Bhutanam. So gratitude ultimately comes from the idea that if I may be here and one person may do some good for me, one person may be kind and helpful, another person may do some good for me. So we are grateful to all of them, but we understand above them all is Krishna. And whatever good is being done to me through anyone, it is being done by Krishna through that person. So we are grateful to that person, no doubt. But ultimately, we are grateful to Krishna. Srila Prabhupada kept a journal in his Jalduta travels, when he went on ship from India to America. And in the journal, one of his first entries is, I am so grateful to Lord Krishna for enlightening Sumati Moraji from within her heart to make these nice arrangements for vegetables and grains on the ship. Prabhupada was a vegetarian. And Prabhupada took some supply with him, but he couldn't take much. But she had said, the Swamiji is a vegetarian, he's a strict vegetarian. He said, she had told Captain Pandya, keep a good amount of vegetable supply. So Prabhupada was grateful. Prabhupada was grateful to Sumati Moraji, but Prabhupada was also grateful to Krishna. That Krishna has guided. So for a devotee, gratitude comes by connecting the good things in our life with Krishna. So I'll talk about 3 steps towards gratitude and we'll conclude this discussion. See, these 3 steps involve different conceptions of gratitude. Sometimes some people think of gratitude as an emotion. I'm feeling grateful. Now, this is good that at least sometimes we feel grateful. So generally, life has dualities. So there are ups and downs. There are kabhi khushi, kabhi gum. So generally what happens is, when something good happens to us, we feel grateful. So this is the emotion of gratitude. But Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, 17th chapter, 16th verse, when he's talking about austerity of the mind, manaha prasad saumyatvam. So manaha prasad is contentment, it is satisfaction. One of the easiest ways contentment or satisfaction is cultivated is through being grateful. So gratitude is not just an emotion, it can also be a decision. Decision means I wait for something good to happen, then I'll feel good. I will look for the good. So right now, I may be here. How can I feel grateful? I can look for the good that has happened to me in the past and be grateful for that. So decision means, as I said, Parikshit Maharaja is looking for reasons to be grateful. So look for reasons to be grateful. Look for the good that has happened in our life, even if nothing good is happening right now. So gratitude can be a decision. Yeah, right now I'm going through a tough situation, but in the past my life was better. And that, when my life was better, that has prepared me. It has given me some resources to deal with the situation. So it is not humanly possible to be grateful for all situations. When people say, be grateful for all situations. Well, it's just denying people's humanity. When Draupadi was being disrobed, nobody told her, be grateful for all situations. It's a horrible situation to be in. So if somebody's child has just made some accident or somebody's child has passed away, then be grateful. You can't be grateful at that time. But that does not mean they're two different things. We can't be grateful for all situations. Because some situations are just terrible. But we can be grateful in all situations. The key difference, for and in. That means, how can I be grateful in all situations? By shifting my vision beyond that situation. Okay, I lost a loved one. Okay, but I can't be grateful I lost a loved one, but I can be grateful that I have a supportive family, that I have a helpful community, that I have maybe some financial security, that I have some good health, I have some spiritual wisdom to make sense of this. So we can find reasons to be grateful by looking beyond the situation. Not so much why did this happen, but what can I do about it? So in general, I said to cultivate gratitude, it's a decision. And it is a decision to not just look at the adversity, but to look around the adversity. Okay, this thing has happened, but look around it. Okay, in what context has happened? The same thing could have happened to me maybe at some other time. Maybe I lose a loved one at a time when my health is completely down. It could have been so much worse. So in one sense, look around the adversity. If you keep looking at the adversity, or in this case, the atrocity also, whatever it is, look around it. Then we will find that there are reasons to be grateful. Nobody can say that every single thing in my life is wrong. Well, if every single thing in our life would be wrong, then our life wouldn't stay for long. Isn't it? See, there are many people who whatever be our age, probably our average age will be about 25, 30, 35, 40, 45. There are so many people who die before they attain the age that they have attained, that we have attained. So, when you talk about grateful, there are gifts in life. But there is also the gift of life. That we are alive means that Krishna still has some plan for us. That our life, that we are alive means our life is not over. Sometimes people say like that, oh, I lost this job, my life is over now. This relationship broke down, my life is over now. Oh, my health went down, my life is over. No. If we are alive, then our life is not over. No matter how big a loss we may have faced, the gift of life is something which can always be grateful for. As long as we are alive. our life is not over. Sometimes these phrases itself, which people use, they can be quite toxic. My life is over now. Well, your life is far bigger than some mistakes that you might do or some misdeeds you might do or somebody else might do. Yeah, life is far, far bigger. So, we need to value the gift of life itself. Prajanascha smikandarpaha. Actually, life is a miracle. That life is not so easy to have. Now, so, we look for the good around the bad. And we'll see that, okay, this thing is terribly wrong in my life, but there are still things which are right in my life. And then, this last part I said I'll talk about 3 ways to cultivate gratitude. So Parikshit Maharaj what is he doing? He's looking at all the sages who have come. He's looking at the sacred place he is here at. And he is feeling, neither Krishna is here with him, nor the Pandavas here with him. But he's seeing their relationship is benedicting me right now. So he's looking for the good around the bad. He's seeing that. Now, I'll be using this acronym ACE. Now, how we can ace our life with gratitude. If life is an exam, we want to remember Krishna at the time of death. Then we will ace the exam of life. But actually, to remember Krishna, we need to have a grateful attitude. If we are resentful, why did this person do this and why did this person do that and then how can we really remember Krishna? We are remembering Krishna, but we are remembering Krishna with anger, with annoyance, with unhappiness. Then we are not going to go to Krishna. We should remember Krishna with affection, with gratitude. So look for the good around the bad. Then second is, look for the good that can help us to counter the bad. So, look for not just good to counter the bad. The bad thing has happened. Nobody is denying that it has happened. But after it has happened now, among the good things that are there in my life, what is it that I can do to help to counter the bad? So this attitude can actually be so helpful. Before the pandemic, around 2018, I was traveling in America, and I had landed in Chicago airport, and then one devotee had come to pick me up. But another devotee also came to meet me. He said, I am traveling the next day, so I won't be there for the program. I wanted to meet you. So this devotee said, okay. He says, can I take this bag? So I put my bag down. And then afterwards we got to the car. I said, can I have my bag? He says, which bag? He said, I told you, you wanted to carry my bag. He says, but you didn't give it to me. And then we just ran back. And there was no bag anywhere. And normally, now that bag had my laptop. Normally, whenever I'm traveling, I keep my passport in my pocket. But somehow that day I had kept my passport in my bag. And without the passport, you're immobilized. And in India, we have other recognitions by which you can travel at least from one place to another. But without a passport, I had so many programs there for only 3-4 days, and I had to go to the next destination, And I just became completely overwhelmed. What do I do at that time? I was trying not to get angry with the devotee, because he was also feeling very guilty that, okay, the passport is lost, the laptop is lost. And I was trying not to get angry, but I was just feeling so helpless, so enraged. I didn't know whether to be angry with him or angry with myself. I was thinking, why did I have to put the passport in that bag today? Sometimes what happens is, if some situation has come where 100% the mistake is someone else's, then it's easy to be angry with someone else. But when it's your mistake also, then, if you're honest, is my being angry with someone else my excuse for not being angry with myself? So then what happens is, it becomes very difficult. So I just didn't know what to do. So then I called, I immediately Googled and, how do you get your pass? We went to the police and we asked the police that, can you have CCTV? He said that, yeah, what point was there? He said, oh, okay, that point, our CCTV is broken over there. Really? Okay, that is America. So then they said, but can't you find out somewhere nearby who would pass by? He says, 60,000 people go through this airport every day. So he says, what can you find? So he says, you can give a report and we'll see what we can do. But then after he said, you can assume your passport is lost forever. As he said, I'll tell you privately, as a favor to you. Is this really a favor? He was not very helpful. Then he asked me, how much were the goods in your bag? I said I had a laptop, and I had my phone was with me. I had a laptop and a passport. He said, okay, laptops are expensive, but they're not super expensive. You can just buy a new laptop. So he was not helpful at all. Then we decided to go to the local police. We Googled, how do you get a passport back? And they said it will take at least 7 to 10 days. In India, it might take 7 to 10 months. Maybe not. Now, Indian government is much better. But anyway, 7 to 8 days. But still, I would have to cancel 3 different programs in 3 different cities. So at that time, I called the local temple president. There's a Mataji there. And she said, actually, this was Chicago. Near Chicago, there is a community called Naperville. And Naperville is among the highest, fastest growing, the safest communities in America. It's mostly filled with Indians. Like Chinese people generally stay in one place, they call it Chinatown. The Indians generally don't stay like that, but Indians are doing like that now. So Naperville is one place, near New York there is one, Edison. Lots of Indians stay over there. So they told me, we'll try to do something. Then, so he gave me the contact of a devotee. He says he knows somebody in the embassy. And I called that devotee. He says, okay, I think I can call the chief embassy officer, the ambassador over there. Let me see what he can do. And then he called the chief embassy officer. And then, he just did it in 15 minutes. Then I called the embassy and he says, yeah, Mr. My legal name is Pujari. So, Mr. Pujari, we're waiting for a call from you. So he said that, if you can come right away, we heard you're leaving in 3 days, we'll arrange for your passport in 3 days. So at that time, I felt so much supported. One part of me was saying, I was trying to serve Krishna, why did this have to happen to me? But I felt that there is such a community there to help, to support. I had not met this temple, but this is the first time I was visiting. I didn't even know this devotee. But this devotee immediately called the embassy. Then I went there and then we had a nice talk with the ambassador. He happened to be there at that time. And he had come to some of the temples. So, a nice talk. And then I didn't have to cancel a single flight. I got the passport back. So, actually, as soon as I thought that, there are so many devotees there to help. So, look for the good to counter the bad. The bad has happened, but we can look for the good. And if you do that, we'll find there is so much good. Of course, afterward, I don't know what happened. That particular person, after almost 1 month, when I had given up all hope, I had got my new passport back, and somebody sent me an email. I have got your bag. If you want, call me on this number. Really? Okay, then I called on this number, and then that person said, actually, this is a man, he's a South American, I think a Mexican man, and he said that actually my in-laws were there I had just arrived at Chicago on that day, and I thought it was your bag. It was their bag, so I picked it up. And yesterday when the in-laws left, they left this bag behind. Then we realized it was not our bag. So I called you. So now he was somewhere in Minnesota. Now I was not even planning to go to Minnesota. I'm not going there. So Minneapolis in Minnesota. So then I called, are there any devotees over there? And then one of the devotees, he said, okay, we are there in Minneapolis. So, okay, we can go there. But then I gave him the address. He says, hey, this is a high crime area. I don't want to go there. And then he had some friend in the police, and he said, this person has 30 crimes against him. I don't want to go there at all. So then I called the devotees in Columbus. So I go there to Columbus regularly. So the devotees in Columbus, they said that, okay, we have been to Minneapolis before. We can go there if you want. I said, how much is the risk? So one devotee told me, before I came to Bhakti, I was a boxer and a fighter. So he said, I have some opportunity to use that in Krishna's service. So now in America, it's legal to have guns. But most Indians generally don't keep guns. So he said, okay. He said, they called in the devotee community, they found the biggest kitchen knife that they had. They took that and they went there. Now when they went there, it is amazing. That person was not there. Apparently his grandmother was there and some kids were playing. It was a very friendly atmosphere. So they had taken some fruit, they gave some fruits to them and they said, you eat some food with us. He said, no, thank you. And they came back. And everything was as it is in the laptop bag. So I got the laptop bag, I got the passport bag. But when I got the passport back, I came back to India and they took me to the police. They said, you are a criminal. What? He said, you have 2 passports. Then I had to explain to them. He says, no, this is quite a story. No thief will give the passport back to you. So then I said, okay. I showed him, I opened my laptop and I showed my email correspondence. I had written the embassy also. I said, I got my passport back. So, because what had happened was, they had written in the new passport that your old passport is cancelled. But my old passport had my American visa. So if the old passport is cancelled, is the visa also cancelled? The visa is cancelled and I'm illegal in America. So it is a bit complicated. So they said that, okay, your old passport is cancelled, but your visa is not cancelled. But then he said that was an oral statement from them. But on the passport, and the old passport, new passport, it says old passport cancelled. So I don't have any legal authorization for that. Then finally I showed them the email, this is a correspondence. He says, okay, you get an old passport cancelled sign. You can get this old passport stamped saying that the passport is cancelled but the visas are valid. So then I went to the Indian place, Mumbai place. They said, this can be done only by the person who has issued you, by the embassy that has issued you the visa. I said, that's in America, in Chicago. He says, but I can't go into America. Then one devotee said, okay, I'm going to America. I'll sneak your passport with my passport. Then he took the passport to Chicago. He got it, went to the embassy. I sent an email that I'm sending my passport with someone to the embassy. So they got it stamped saying that passport cancelled, visas valid. And then he then shipped the passport back to me. So shipping passports is illegal. So we had to cover the passport with multiple layers of cloths so that it was not visible. So anyway, it was quite an adventure. But the point was that this was the time I realized how much a devotee community is there to support us in times of need. So look for the good around the bad. That is the last. And C is the last part of the talk. E is look for the good that may emerge from the bad. So now if you consider Parikshit Maharaja, he is seeing the presence of the sages as a good thing. Okay, now I have to die. How do I face this final exam of death? What should I do? There are so many wise people here who are there to give me guidance, who are there to give me blessings. And I'm so grateful for that. So death has come. But look for the good to counter the bad. The presence of the sages was the good. And then emerge from the bad means that even when bad things happen in life, Krishna still is expert enough to bring good even out of the bad. That doesn't mean that the bad thing is not bad. That's why there's a difference between saying everything that happens is good and everything that happens is for good. So is for is important. Not that everything that happens is good. Tasyanu rajan. Bhishma Pitamaha's prayer says, Tasyanu anuvihito. And it's interesting, Prabhupada translated that not as everything is Krishna's plan. Prabhupada translates as everything is within Krishna's plan. So that means if I make a mistake, my mistake is not Krishna's plan. If somebody hurts me, that person hurting me is not necessarily Krishna's plan. But whether it is through my mistake or the other person's misdeed, Krishna's plan can still work. So be patient. Wait for the good that may emerge from the bad. If we have that attitude, if we have that patience, then we'll find that Krishna will take us to a bigger and better place. At Srila Prabhupada, he tried so much to share Krishna Bhakti in India. It was just not successful. He was trying again and again and again. Even when he went to America, it didn't seem to be working. But Prabhupada, now wait for the good to emerge from the bad. Now wait is not passively wait. We continue doing what we can. We continue to do our service. So if we do that, we'll find that Krishna will take us to a better place. And that's what happened to Srila Prabhupada. Prabhupada later said that the success of his outreach exceeded even his own expectations. Prabhupada said that I see temples and they're filled with devotees. But 108 temples was huge. 70 books was huge. 14 world tours was huge. Especially in the 70s. Now people travel quite frequently. At that time it was it was way too rare. And then hundreds and hundreds of thousands of people inspired to love Krishna, to devote their lives to Krishna, to at least bring Krishna into their lives. That is all extraordinary. So for all of us, faith also means, when we are grateful to Krishna, we understand that Krishna's plan is still working in my life. And even if everything seems to be going wrong right now, you could say our devotion is seen in our openness to possibility. It is that even through this dark situation, Krishna can take me to a better situation. So Prabhupada was all alone in America, but he had the confidence that Krishna, you are the supreme magician. He said that everybody is under Maya by your desire, and if you so desire, you can make my words understandable to them, by which they can come out of illusion. So when we have this, the gratitude is based on, not necessarily, my present is dark, and my past was also dark. Well, nobody's past is completely dark, but because it was dark. But we can look ahead. Krishna can take us to a better place. And that way, when we focus on the good that may emerge from the bad, that's how we can stay positive, we can stay purposeful, and we can keep moving forward in our life. And we see what was the good that emerged? The whole Srimad Bhagavatam emerged. For the benediction of humanity, Puranarka Adhanoditaha. When Krishna departed from the world, Krishna has returned to the world in the form of the Srimad Bhagavatam. And that would not have happened if Parikshit Maharaja had been resentful, if Parikshit Maharaja held a grudge, if Parikshit Maharaja let himself be beaten down by guilt. In the entire Srimad Bhagavatam, Parikshit Maharaj is hearing attentively and asking appropriate questions. Parikshit Maharaj is not saying, what a terrible thing that I did, what a fool I was, what a fool I was. No, that chapter is over. Just forget it. So we need to be able to, in one sense, when we learn tolerance, tolerance means also tolerating our own faultiness. Just like we have to tolerate others, we have to tolerate ourselves also. That I am imperfect. And that means not only will people let me down, that people will not live up to our expectations. But we also have to acknowledge that we may not live up to our expectations. And we need to accept that and keep moving forward. And okay, I may be imperfect now, but I am in perfect hands. And we focus not on our state, but we focus on Krishna's state. I may be imperfect, but I am in perfect hands. And Krishna consciousness means we focus less on ourselves and we focus more on Krishna. But I am in perfect hands. Sometimes we think being Krishna conscious means we are focusing on our own imperfectness. Yes, we can think of our imperfectness, but after that, it is to focus more on Krishna. But the primary focus is on that I am in perfect hands. We say Trunadapi Sunijana Tarorapi Sahishnana. But the point of it all is Kirtaniya Sadahari. Bhaktivinoda Thakur says, Amara Jivana Sada Paperata. He's talking about his fallen condition. The focus is, therefore, Bina Toma Nahi Gati. I have no destination apart from you. I fully take shelter of you. So yes, I am imperfect, but I am in perfect hands. So we dwell on our imperfection so that it reminds us of the need to turn toward the perfect hands of Krishna. And we have that disposition, then we'll find that there is so much to be grateful for. And that gratitude will enrich our heart. Two things. Gratitude, it will enrich our heart. That means wherever we are, we will feel enriched. And gratitude will sweeten our devotion. No, devotion is sweet. And as we become purer and purer, we'll realize Krishna's sweetness more and more. But right now, if we have gratitude, that will sweeten our devotion right now. And thus we can make our life richer and sweeter, even while living in this troubling and troublesome world. So I'll summarize. I spoke on cultivating a grateful disposition. The first part I was focused on Parikshit Maharaja's gratitude. So we took the whole backstory of the first canto overview, how it is a convoluted storyline, but there is one consistent thread. That is establishing the glory of Parikshit Maharaj. How gloriously his ancestors departed, even if they departed in various circumstances. And then how glorious he was in life. And then, therefore, how he was now ready to hear the Bhagavatam and to be a part of this great conversation. So essentially gratitude was, he's looking for reasons to be grateful. The verse we discussed was, he's remembering that Krishna is kind to me, not because of me, but because of my relationship with the Pandavas. So generally gratitude doesn't sit well with an entitlement mentality. When somebody beyond me is doing something good for me, even if I don't deserve it, that is gratitude. When we talk about two obstacles to gratitude, first we discussed is grudge, holding grudges against others. How do we avoid that? We discussed about when somebody does some misdeed, it's best to assume the least negative explanation for the misdeed. That is, assume that it is either out of ignorance or out of incompetence, not out of malevolence. Parikshit Maharaj did not blame Shringi or Shamikrishi. Okay, it was a tragic thing that happened, but it's happened, let it be over. Let's move to the next chapter in our life. So, for us, grudging is where we are blaming others. The other is, extreme is what? Is guilt. Guilt where we are blaming ourselves. And taking responsibility for our misdeeds is good. But beating ourselves up constantly, that is harmful. When beating ourselves, what happens by this is, it consumes our mind and it cripples our actions. So externally and internally, that can be toxic. So Parikshit Maharaj expresses remorse, takes responsibility. But after that, he's not constantly saying, what a fool I was, what a fool I was, what a fool I was. So I'm a fallen soul. We need to focus more on the soul and less on the fallen. And the last part we discussed was, what was it? Like gratitude, how to cultivate it. So So basically, guilt, there's two unhealthy responses are guilt and grudge. In between is gratitude. Right? I don't blame others, I don't blame myself. Rather than looking out or looking in, I look up. Look up to see what is Krishna's plan and how it is going forward. And for that, we discussed the acronym ACE. A was what? Look for the good around the bad. The bad has happened, but that is not the only thing that has happened in our life. So we see gratitude not just as an emotion, but as a decision. I consciously, okay, right now I'm going through a bad phase, but there have been good phases in my life. So look for the good around the bad. Then look for the good to counter the bad. Have you talked about my life may have no gifts right now, but life itself is a gift. And be grateful for the gift of life. And then when we have this disposition that if I'm still alive, that means Krishna still has a plan for me. My life is not over. And last E was emerge. That means that we look ahead with faith that Krishna's plan is still working in my life and Krishna will take me to a better place. Krishna will do something better through me. So Krishna took Parikshit Maharaja back to Godhead. Through Parikshit Maharaja, Krishna revealed the Srimad Bhagavatam. So for all of us, we can also, whatever be the situation that we are in, we don't artificially imagine that everything is good. But even by acknowledging the bad thing that is there, we look beyond it. Even if we can't be grateful for all situations, we can be grateful in all situations. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna. Yes. Okay. So any questions?
Hare Krishna Prabhuji. So, what is difference?
Okay. Yes.
What is difference between good in life?
I was looking around instead of looking at. Okay. Yeah.
What is difference between good in life and good of life?
What do you mean by good in life and good of life?
You discuss probably.
Well, we have to explain the question before I can explain. So the question needs a purport. Did I use those phrases, good in life and good of life? I said gifts in life.
Sorry, yes.
Gifts in life. Gifts in life means, I may have a good job, I may have a nice family, I may have a good house. These are gifts in life. But gift of life means I am alive. Life itself is a gift. If we consider how vulnerable we are, how fragile our bodies are, there are hundreds of ways in which we could have died till the time we have arrived at the age that we have arrived at. Isn't it? So the fact that we are alive, it's not just because we took care of our health, because we took care of this or that. It's a gift. Life is a gift. That's why the gift of life is something which you can always be grateful for. Okay? Thank you. Yes.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji. About that internal willpower and external boundaries, that I will not put myself in situation where I will be provoked to do this again. In like Grihastha life, sometimes we are like 24/7 we are surrounded by some relatives who help us get provoked. So in that situation, how can we manage?
Well, if there are relatives who help us get provoked, when they're not helping us, who trigger us, we can say, then it is important for us to also identify the relatives who will pacify us or the friends who will pacify us. So we need to balance that association. There are some people who just provoke us. We can't do anything about it. That is just the way people are. But see, if we consider our social circle, it can be family members, relatives, friends, colleagues, devotees, all of it. There are some are positive. That means in their association we get strength. So they give strength to us. And there are some who are negative. That means Just being with them, it requires strength. You know, as soon as they come in, it's almost like the energy out of the room goes out. Like you feel every word you're speaking, it's like you are walking on eggshells or you're walking on a minefield. What will cause an explosion, you don't know. And there are people like that. And sometimes those people also help us grow. But those people are difficult to be with. And if those are the only people we are with, then we'll become drained. We'll become exhausted, we'll explode sooner or later. If we don't explode, we'll implode. We'll collapse internally. But we need to balance that. Okay, these are some difficult people, I have to deal with that. But then are there people whom I look forward to be with them, where I'm understood, where I'm accepted, where I'm appreciated, where I can just be myself. And even if we have one or two people like that, we need to make time and spend with them. So it could be also a spiritual association where we feel inspired, we feel enlivened. So we balance that. So we can't avoid. So one thing which we could do is if we know that we are going into a high-stakes conversation with someone and we are likely to be provoked, then one thing is maybe don't go alone there. Go with somebody else who will calm us, or whose presence itself will calm us. Like say, sometimes the husband and wife may have some differences, they may quarrel with each other. And both may want to yell at the other person. But if the child is in the room, he says, not in front of the child. I'm angry with you, but we'll talk about this later. Sometimes we need external restraints, external supports. So what those will be, we have to look at our particular situation and find that. Okay? Thank you. Any questions by the Matajis? Where is the mic? Okay, it's all right. We'll come to you later. Yeah.
Prabhuji, like similar question to what Prabhuji has asked, but I was thinking in a different perspective. When we have practiced, we are practicing bhakti, and we have got training and many things. So there was a component of compassion from the side of those who were taking care of us, like mentors and counselors and the many devotees. So for me, I see personally they have shown a lot of compassion. But when it comes to me, I don't have that much tolerance, or I'm judgmental to my dependents. That may be my family members, or that may be anybody's spouse or anybody. So I don't have that much tolerance. So how do I see that? How do I improve, or in which all cases we should not tolerate also, or not tolerate in the sense what is the boundary line?
See, just because our seniors have been compassionate to us does not necessarily mean that we can be compassionate to others to the same degree. But compassion is not necessarily a 1-0 thing. It's not that I'm compassionate or I'm heartless. From where I am, even if I take one step forward, if my present tendency, or the present tendency of my mind is to be judgmental, it's unrealistic to expect our mind to suddenly change. But we could just bring a little pause. Whenever I see something wrong, my tendency is to jump to conclusions and criticize the person, yell at the person. Okay, but let me just a gentle pause, let me find out. So, if we have to find out what is doable for us in our situation. And small things can make a big difference. Maybe we are judgmental, but what we could do is, at other times we can be a little more appreciative. And then we will say, okay, we're not just criticizing. Like, we catch others doing wrong, but we also can catch others doing right. When they do something right, we appreciate them. Otherwise, we catch others doing wrong and we highlight it. And we catch others doing wrong and we highlight it. We catch others doing right and we neglect it. That is a recipe for ruining relationships. Isn't it? So, we can, small incremental changes. What we can do from where we are. Okay. Thank you. Yes, last question.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji, there was a point discussed that affiliation to religious organizations has been shown to have psychological benefits. But then there was also a point discussed that when these organizations have a high moral standard, it sometimes leads to feeling of guilt or not feeling enthusiastic. But how do we apply it to an organization like ours, where we expect a devotee to uphold some kind of moral values?
Yes. See, there are two things over here. In every relationship, there are two aspects. There's a healthy relationship. There is accepting the other person. And there is expecting from the other person. And every relationship involves both. If you are a parent, we have children, then parents should love their children as they are, accept the children as they are. But at the same time, the parents don't have expectations of the children. The children are not thinking, they're not going to get inspiration, one day I'll study and I want to do well in exam. No, it is the parents' expectations. So in general, in any good relationship, there has to be a healthy balance of accepting and expecting. If there is accepting, then what will happen? If there's only accepting without any expecting, then there will only be stagnation. That person will never improve. If a child doesn't do at all well in exams, gets very poor marks, I say, I accept everything, whatever you do. Where is the child going to get motivation to study? Stagnation could be there, or also degradation could be there further. There's only acceptance. So in general, the Western style of parenting is centered more on accepting. I was at one devotee's house, an American devotee's house, and I was talking about their family. So he said their daughter was just finishing her 12th. I said, which area is going to graduate in? And the father looked at his wife, he said, I don't think we ever asked her that, did we? So, it is okay, what she wants to let her do it. It's too much non-involvement, you can say. But expecting can actually lead to too much expectation, only expecting without accepting can lead to the crushing of spirits. That person feels so burdened by the weight of expectations that they just can't do anything. It's like in weightlifting, when we lift weights slightly above our capacity, we strengthen. But the weight is way above our capacity. We may try to lift the weight, afterwards somebody will have to come to lift us up. And we carry us on a stretcher. Isn't it? Sometimes you stretch and then you require a stretcher. You can't stretch too much. So we don't want the crushing of spirits. Sometimes Indian parenting can go towards expecting too much without accepting. So we need a healthy balance of both. Now, that balance will be individual. Some devotees are from a background where their previous life was quite sattvic. And for them to follow high standards of, say, morality will be relatively easier. For somebody else, it might be tougher. Then there should need to be a candid discussion where the devotee is at, what steps they are taking to move forward. Those steps are accepted. Those steps are acknowledged and they act on them. So as long as everyone is moving forward, that is the important thing. Now, how fast somebody is moving forward or how far somebody has moved, that will vary from person to person. That's why if we have a community, our focus in the community should be everyone is moving forward. That should be happening. Otherwise, it's not a spiritual community. So that is the level of expectation we should have. Everybody is moving forward. But how far have they moved? How fast have they moved? That can vary. And if it varies, we need to accept people accordingly. Srila Prabhupada had his disciples from the West who just moved in the temple and they traveled across the world to assist him in spreading Krishna Bhakti. And Prabhupada, when he came back to India, he had life members. They had no intention of leaving their families, leaving their jobs. But they were also in their own way helpful. They contributed in many ways, financially, through contacts, through relationships. And they helped. Prabhupada accepted them also. Prabhupada was not guilting them. when are you going to start chanting 16 rounds? When are you going to take initiation? Prabhupada not guilting them into pushing, going higher. But Prabhupada accepted them and engaged them. And they definitely did a lot of service also. So if we find that in a particular relationship the acceptance is very less and the expectation is too much, then we may need to find some spiritual relationship where the acceptance is higher. And then, of course, we can't expect the balance to be there everywhere. But we need somewhere where we feel also accepted. And that's why there's the whole idea of like-minded association, sajatiya. Like-minded association, what does it mean? That means everybody in that association is comfortable at moving at a particular pace. And in that particular, it could be a small circle. So whatever it is, so we need to find that circle of acceptance for ourselves. Okay? So thank you very much. Grantraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki, Srila Prabhupada ki, Gaur Bhakta Vrinda ki, Nitai Gaur Premanande.
Hare Krishna. So we would like to thank His Grace Chaitanya Charan Prabhu. Last 2 hours it was so mesmerizing, such beautiful analysis and such beautiful understanding that he shares with everyone. Like I said at the beginning, he's an author of more than 27 books. His latest book has come. The book title is You Are Not Your Mind, You Are Better. Right? So this book is available. This book is generally available at the cost of 200 rupees. But Prabhuji is, on a tour, releasing this book. So this book is available at rupees 150 now. Those who want to avail it and take the benefit of it, please. Yeah. The book table is behind.
So, especially in modern or postmodern circles, I found if you tell people you are not your body, people don't really care. It seems too philosophical, too abstract. But you tell them you are not your mind, they're really interested. Because everybody's mind is troubling them. And, I'm not my mind, then who am I really? So, indirectly, we can actually reach people much better. So this whole book is based on that approach. That it's of course not just for you. It is written in such a way that when somebody with no familiarity with spirituality can appreciate it. There are 64 articles, each of just 2 pages with some simple diagrams of the kind that I was drawing. So each of these articles addresses a particular issue. Say we have too much anxiety or we have too much craving for something. If our mind just doesn't cooperate when we want to do something, how do we deal with such situations? That's explained. They say, what is the mind? How is the mind really different from consciousness and soul? So both the philosophical and the practical aspects of mind management are described. This is, you are not your mind, you are better. There are different verses in the Bhagavad which address the mind, and those verses are used for reflecting on these articles. So I'll also be available in case somebody wants. I can sign the books. I'll be here for a short while. And thank you very much for your attentive and patient participation. Hare Krishna.
Let us thank His Grace Chaitanya Charan Prabhu by once chanting the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare.